Well, joining us now from Washington is author and historian Dr. Webster Tarpley to discuss the situation further. Dr. Tarpley, it's good to see you here. Now, President Obama seems pretty sure that the U.S. agenda of regime change in Syria will be implemented. How do you think this unilateral position would affect the global balance of power?
Well, I think we first have to see that Obama is a desperate demagogue, an embattled demagogue, and he's facing a Republican challenger, Romney, who is about to go on a world tour. He's going to go to Israel, to the Olympics, and all kinds of places in between. So Obama's trying to preen himself as a great world statesman, which of course is complete nonsense. I think the world balance of power has maybe shifted even more against Obama than maybe obvious. When we look at the events in Syria of last week, I think we had a big offensive by the NATO side with their Saudi and Turkish and other supporters, that this offensive has perhaps failed. It had, I think we can say, 5 or 6 prongs. There was a prong at the United Nations. They wanted to pass a resolution finally allowing Chapter 7 measures to attack Syria. This has been vetoed by Russia, vetoed by China. Even Pakistan and South Africa abstained in the face of heavy U.S. arm twisting. Secondly, television warfare has been unleashed, right? The plan that has been circulated for the past 5 or 6 weeks, that NATO would shut down Arabsat, shut down Nilesat, and begin broadcasting their own programs to get kind of hysteria of defeatism inside the Syrian population. That has not worked. Then we've had the attempted decapitation of the Syrian armed forces with what I think might have been a drone attack using small missiles to kill the 3 leaders, Defense Minister Raja, Mr. Shaukat Turkmani, and the intelligence chief who later died. There was also an attempt last week to have a panic crash of the Syrian currency to try to essentially use economic warfare. And finally, the 5th prong is swarming. It looks like NATO has done another airlift, as your report was just saying, to bring in foreign fighters in unprecedented numbers, really taking just about anybody who would come from Libya, from Egypt, from Jordan, from many, many other parts of the world. In maybe the tens of thousands, it's not clear how many. And these fighters were allowed to swarm in across the Jordanian and other borders and try to create this situation of siege in Damascus. And it looks like those forces have been largely defeated. So what happened between Wednesday and Friday of last week seems to look like a significant defeat, at least so far, of the NATO side.
Right now, in the case of Syria, Russia and China have come out as staunch supporters of security and stability. And meanwhile, Washington is trying to pacify protests in other countries like Bahrain. Why don't Russia and China try to take those situations to the Security Council?
Well, they should. And it would be better, of course, to be on the offensive rather than to always be on the defensive. And it seems to me that the time has come to drop the verbal charades and essentially say there is no democracy movement in Syria. There's a bunch of NATO agents who are on the attack. And in the countries where there really is a democracy movement, Bahrain or Saudi Arabia itself, this is being systematically blacked out here in the U.S. media and so forth. It's clearly done with the help of the State Department. So I think it would be important to shift the attention to Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, terrible situation, Oman, United Arab Emirates. All these reactionary monarchies of the Gulf, it seems to me, really are the ones that ought to be on the hot seat, and that might give Syria some surcease.
Indeed. Now, President Obama's speech on the world's leadership today sounded very much as coming from an imperial power, so to speak. How will this be perceived by the international community, you think?
Well, as a combination of bluff and bombast and threat. It is important, though, to see that Obama has delivered for imperialism. The Obama method is to try to avoid U.S. direct military attack, at least in terms of large conventional forces. Obama relies on drones, he relies on special forces, he relies on irregular forces, and his irregular forces include al-Qaeda, interestingly enough, and all kinds of terrorist groups around the world that have now been recruited into this U.S. strategy. So I don't think any intelligent observer is going to be much impressed by what Obama has said. I think they're going to be more interested in the fact that this big push last week against Syria, by some indications at least, has been a failure. One commentator said a gesture of despair on the part of the NATO forces. It just didn't seem to gel. And now I think, well, we have to see. They're not going to give up, but they have been dealt a setback.
Well, we are just going to have to wait and see how that unfolds. That was author and historian Dr. Webster Tarpley. They're joining us via studios in Washington. Dr. Tarpley, thank you very much again for your insights here on Press TV.